Hello, 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 and welcome to the Mystic Nerd Squad podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Meyerson, here on what is going to mark the end of season 5 of the podcast. And I'm really so thrilled and excited. This season has been a blast. I have had the most amazing conversations. Today will be no different. My friend Barb Hubbard is here, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about Barb before we jump into a conversation. Barb Hubbard is an EFT tapping practitioner and ADHD specialist who launched her coaching business in 2018. She loves supporting ambitious individuals who have big goals. Barb helps dreamers discover clarity, find their focus, and feel motivated to work on the big and scary projects on their to-do list. Barb, welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk to you.
I am too. I'm always excited to talk to you, and no surprise to the listener, I could have continued our conversation and just said like, oh, well, we'll do the podcast another time because we just have such great conversations. I'm most excited because the topic of ADHD is such a big one. And when you and I first met, we have a shared background in working in special education, and that's kind of where your heart started.
Yeah.
And now you're working with clients using EFT, using strategies for working through the challenges of ADHD. How did you start your journey with using EFT tapping with people?
I so I started using it just with myself,
Mm.
honestly. That was the start. So I learned about tapping probably over 10 years ago now. And I just became certified as a practitioner last month. So I've been using it for myself for a long, long, long time. A friend of mine introduced it to me because I am anxious. I have anxiety. She thought that it might help. She was right. It did help. And for a while, for several years, it was just kind of something I picked up, put down, picked up, put down, depending on life. And when I launched my business, though, it became part of my normal routine. I talk a lot about creating a morning routine, which, as we talked about, starts with your evening routine, right? But
Mm-hmm.
my morning routine almost always includes tapping at some point, right? I don't think that your morning routine has to be super rigid, but for me, it included tapping. And very early on, I realized, this could be something I do with my clients. But it took me a while to get to that point of saying, okay, I'm ready to do this. I there are so many things you need to learn when you're a solopreneur because you're doing it all, right? So you need to not just be a coach to your clients, but you have to learn how to do marketing and you have to learn the billing and you have to learn all the things, right? Networking. And so I always felt like I didn't have the time to devote to it. But it was always in the back of my mind, like this could be really helpful. And I would say to clients, go look up this person on YouTube, go look up this person's app, right? Like check it out in this way. I can't do it with you, but it's out there. It's something that could support you. And some of my clients would. But that's how. And so about a year ago, I said, I was talking to a friend who is an EFT tapping practitioner, and I said, so tell me who did you do your training with? Because I respected her. I do still respect her and wanted her opinion. When I did an hour or so of research on it and realized that that place had a virtual training offer that month, I was like, okay, I'm in. I got to jump in, right? So that's what I did.
I love that. I think it's so special to find something that works for you, particularly with managing your nervous system and managing anxiety. There are a bunch of tools out there, but I also, for the past few years, have heard more and more people who are using tapping for themselves. What do you think it is about tapping that really appeals to people?
Honestly, I think the thing that I hear most often is that they can use it for themselves by themselves without me in the picture or anybody else in the picture, right? There are a lot of tools out there, and fortunately, unfortunately, some of them need the other person on the other side of the equation, right? EFT tapping is something that you can do anywhere, anytime by yourself. You really can't do it wrong. There's ways to make it more effective, but sometimes in the car, if somebody cuts me off or I'm sitting in traffic, I just start tapping on the one point on my collarbone. I'm like tap, 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 because that is enough to allow me to refocus and calm my nervous system just that little bit. So I think most people feel like they have found something that can help them at any time, anywhere.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I think anytime we can provide people with tools that don't require a certain set of items or a particular place, whether it's breathing or meditation or grounding techniques that people use, I put it kind of into those categories of things that, yeah, it doesn't cost you any money. You don't have to, you're not going to run out of it. Be like, I don't have any more for myself. So I think, yeah, so true. So how are you using EFT tapping with your clients who are working on challenges with ADHD?
So it's so excited. It's so exciting. I'm so glad you asked this. I can't even speak straight.
I get it. I get it.
So all of my clients come to me, whether they have ADHD, they suspect they might, whatever the story is back there, right? They come to me, their motivation is low. There's something that they really want to do. They are scattered, they can't focus, right? And up until this point of being able to do some EFT tapping with them, I was able to give them lots of strategies. I was able to coach them through, like, okay, what's going to work best for you? But the reality was that we weren't getting any deeper than that. And ADHD comes with emotional dysregulation. That is a key part of it. And, it's people want to say, well, I can't pay attention. And that's true, but you can't pay attention because your emotions are getting in the way. There's so much about ADHD that is tied back to emotions. And EFT tapping gets at the emotions. So if if a client comes to me and they say, in my business, I want to create more social media posts, but I'm not doing it. Through tapping, we can address the overwhelm that they might be experiencing, the fear they might be experiencing around posting more social media posts, right? And as soon as we lessen that, the overwhelm is less, they have clarity over what step to take first, or the fear is less, then they're ready, right? I had a client a few weeks ago. We did one session of tapping. So we were tapping together for probably about 45 minutes out of the hour together. And 2 hours after our call ended, she texted me and said, "It's done. I posted." I mean, It was that quick, right? Now, the next time she comes to that task or a similar task, some of the fear, some of the overwhelm might show up again, but now she knows how to tap on it herself. And so she can, regulate her nervous system, lower the fear, whatever it is on her own. And if we need to dig back in, then we can have another session on it, right? Sometimes those things, those fears, the overwhelm, those are the two I see most often. Sometimes they're tied back to a belief or something that happened in our childhood. And we need to go a little bit deeper and do a little bit more work. But so often the effects are immediate, right? People are, they feel a little afraid, we do some tapping, and boom, they're doing the thing that they didn't have the motivation to do. And so to answer your question, right? Like ADHD is about emotions. If we can address the emotions, then we have a positive, way to deal with it. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about how much shame comes along with the ADHD territory, especially, if you were not diagnosed in childhood. And if you're an adult now in your 30s, your 40s, probably you weren't, right? I find it's a lot less common, especially because we're getting a sense of how it presents in people, especially women. And it's different than maybe the picture that we had in our minds of what someone with ADHD looks like.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah. Yeah. When we were kids, so I'm 52. I meet a lot of women in their 50s, 40s who are being, diagnosed, or they're wondering, right? Maybe I have ADHD. When we were kids, it was, even if there probably wasn't a diagnosis for boys either, but then there were diagnoses for boys, right? But it was boys who were bouncing off the walls and hyper. And typically for girls, even young girls, the hyperactivity isn't there. The outwardly physical hyperactivity isn't there. Instead, the hyperactivity it shows up as thinking about things, overthinking, and kind of daydreaming, right? And so they call it inattentive ADHD. I see that in women where we can't sleep because we are, we have 1,000 things going through our mind, right? Or we can't act on whatever we need to do next because we're overthinking. What if this, what 5 steps ahead? Well, I don't want to go there, so I'm not going to start now. Right? So that's how it is showing up. And of course, all those young girls were there, and it just wasn't it wasn't known that that's what teachers and parents and other people needed to be looking for.
Yeah.
The other piece that I've been reading about recently is that it truly does often show up for girls and women later in life. And that has to do with hormones, because there's a huge link between estrogen and ADHD symptoms. And so, the hormonal stuff doesn't show up for girls until they're a teenager. It really shows up when they're pregnant in their 20s or 30s. And then again, when they hit perimenopause, right? So it really might not show up until later in life, which is astonishing, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
That is. And I think about, like, in terms of the knowledge that I have around the diagnostic criteria, I think one of the criteria is you have to have had some of those symptoms prior to the age of 12.
Right.
But
Yeah.
then I'm also thinking a lot of girls, women with ADHD can be late bloomers.
Yes.
Like in terms of, because that's also part of the diagnosis, having like a little bit of a lag from your peers in your development. So that's making me think, like, it might not have shown up before you were 12, but maybe it was showing up when you were 15 and 16,
right.
going through that transition and managing all of those hormones and having all of the dysregulated emotions, and people just kind of write you off as like, she's just a little emotional, too sensitive,
Exactly.
meanwhile,
Yeah.
suffering.
Yeah.
But like you see the
Yeah.
outward, but the inward is so much more intense.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I like to look at the characteristics, the symptoms, all of that. I don't diagnose. I don't provide a diagnosis. I can't, right, as a coach.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But what I will say is that the diagnostic manual, right, the things that they're looking for, is they put those out every 5 years, 7 years, something like that, right? So the research hasn't, there's been so much research recently, it hasn't gotten in there yet, right? And so for the medical people who are providing the diagnosis and are evaluating, some of them don't know, right? Some of them, they were trained 20 years ago and they just don't know. Some of them are just going by, well, here are the bullet points in the DSM, right? It's a tricky thing to find a person who is really knowledgeable about what ADHD looks like for women. But the most recent research that hasn't made it into, everybody's knowledge base is that, women might be overlooked because it doesn't show up until later. And the other piece, I mean, let's be honest, when you have kids and you're managing a household and probably a job and kids, just your life is more hectic, right? Mm-hmm. So of course the symptoms are going to be worse, right?
Yeah.
That aspect too.
Yeah, it sounds very similar to the challenges many women are experiencing going through perimenopause and menopause, and the research just isn't out there. Exactly. And we haven't caught up yet. But at the same time, here we are, Barb. Some of us in our 40s and 50s going through menopause, and also perhaps that later in life diagnosis or suspicion of the diagnosis of ADHD. And I don't know, to me, it's like, doesn't matter to me. I don't need somebody to put a stamp of approval. Yes, you are. Yes, you're not. Because I look at my life and I say, oh, it is what it is. This is the nervous system that I have that I'm dealing with. And I like to say neurospicy, but if you're on that neurodivergent scale, whatever it is, it doesn't really matter exactly to label yourself as much as it matters to get to a point where at least you feel validated that there's nothing inherently wrong with you.
Right.
That the way that your nervous system is operating is putting you at a higher risk of having struggles with executive functioning, emotional regulation. Chaos is going to happen when you get overwhelmed.
Yep.
And if you fit in that category, whether you have a true diagnosis, it doesn't matter. You still need the strategies to function, right?
Exactly. Yes.
So
100% agree.
If somebody's listening and they're like, Barb, I think this is me. This is me. I'm struggling. I struggled in my teens. I struggled when I had my kids first, and definitely feel like when life gets out of that homeostasis, like it's just really, really challenging to find some solid ground. What's a good starting point if you're trying to get that solid ground? Let's talk about the EFT tapping. Like, what would be helpful for them in terms of starting to use that as a strategy for themselves?
Yeah. I think EFT tapping is going to be good anytime you're faced with indecision about what to do next, which you probably are if you're in that space that you just described. It's good if you are in the chaos, right? If you are not sleeping well, if you are just overwhelmed with too many things to do, whether that's in your household or your job or whatever. I think it's important to acknowledge that some people want to go through the diagnostic process. They want the evaluation. They want to know what's going on. And there's good things that can come out of that, right? Their doctor might, you could uncover that, you have something else going on that does need medical
True.
attention, right?
True. Yes.
So you can start tapping just to calm yourself enough to make that decision. Do I want to pursue this? Do I want to talk to my doctor about this? Or am I okay with it how it is? Right? Is that another path might be, do I just want to do some research on my own? Do I want to talk to my friends and family? Right? Like just tapping on it can get you to a point where your brain kind of clears and you know what the best next step is for you, right?
Mm.
I think that that's the first place to start, right? And if not some tapping, you can journal about it, you can meditate about it, you can, go for a walk and just you can talk to a friend, right? Like, but just get to that however you need to get to that space of I have cleared my head. I'm pausing. Now I can make a decision that's the best decision for me moving forward. And that's
Yeah.
that's where people need to start. Um, I personally did not see a reason to pursue a formal diagnosis. I am positive I have ADHD, but I didn't need that because there was no benefit to that. However, I did start talking to my doctor about sleep because I was struggling with sleep. Turns out that's perimenopause, and we've ruled out a lot of other stuff, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like I think it's important to have those conversations because it might not be ADHD. It could be something totally different that needs to be addressed, right? But um, as far as where to start, just find your way of calming yourself.
Yeah. And I think I love what you said earlier about the overthinking and being already 5 steps ahead with a very creative mind. And
Yeah.
like you've already worst case scenarioed in 10 different directions to the fifth step.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just me, but that
Probably
is
not.
definitely something that I've done. And so I think it's like a mind habit that happens. I wonder if it's part of that default mode network. I don't know why I point to this part of the brain. I feel like that's where it is in the brain. That part of my brain starts lighting up mode network, and it really goes almost automatically that you're like left there kind of paralyzed. It makes me think of, I don't know if you've seen um the movie Inside Out 2, where like the
Yeah,
new
yeah,
characters come
yeah,
on
yeah,
board and the character of anxiety. And when
yeah,
she gets so in a frenzy that,
yeah,
there is all of this chaos all around, but
yeah,
she is actually frozen in time and can't move forward. That's
yes,
to me
yeah,
what it sometimes feels like when your brain does its own thing and you are just absolutely stuck and feel like you're never getting out of that. Because there's also the piece of ADHD and there's now and not now.
yeah, just
So
yeah, you
you
can't,
can't
yeah,
think
right?
logically about time all the time.
Yes, yes, exactly.
So yeah, I love the idea of even like it doesn't have to be a really big decision. It can literally be in this moment.
Mhm.
Um, let's take a moment and think about, is it going to be helpful for me to explore whether or not I have a diagnosis,
Yeah,
or to do some research on my own, or to talk with someone and to start to, what I like about tapping is there's also the verbiage that goes with it.
yes,
Like
yeah,
you're taking the voice out of your head and using your voice
yeah,
to shift the narrative for yourself.
yeah,
And I'm sure there's some parallel that somebody has made to something like NLP Um, or
Mm-hmm.
even just like your reticular activating system and
Yeah.
starting to just shift the way that your mind responds
Mm-hmm.
to this excess amount of thought. Like, whoa,
Yeah.
hello,
Yeah.
let's stop for a moment. I get to decide when my brain goes crazy
Yes.
and
Yes.
and
Yes. Yeah.
really does that automatic
Yeah.
flow of thought that just becomes really paralyzing.
It is. It is. So in the brain, when you're in that state of paralysis, when you're in that fight, flight, or freeze kind of mode, your amygdala has hijacked your thinking brain. And so with EFT tapping, you are putting your logical thinking brain back online,
Mm,
which I think is brilliant, right?
mm,
Because everybody has had experiences where they've been in that paralysis, and if you can't think of one related to everyday life, think of a time that you were scared, or
mm,
think of a time when, something unexpected happened, right? Maybe it wasn't a scary thing, but you were surprised, right? For a moment, your amygdala takes over and, says, all right, I'm in charge now and I'm going to keep us safe, right?
mhm,
But you can't think straight when that happens, right? And
mhm.
so the tapping allows that logical thinking brain to come back online. And so that's why when you calm yourself through tapping, all of a sudden you'll have this like, oh, I know what I need to do next. I know who I need to talk to. I know, right? But prior to that, you've probably been in these loops of overthinking and, not sure what to do. So it's amazing.
Yeah, I love that you brought the amygdala in that. You made my little brain happy because
Yeah.
I love to talk about the brain. So yeah, I think that is such a huge thing. And I think there's something really empowering about speaking about the functions of your nervous system. And I've always felt excited about explaining it to children because, when
Mm-hmm.
they have really struggled with sensory processing, and, I mean, they have to be a certain age to understand a lot of it, but there are ways to talk about the brain with them, especially when you're talking about executive functioning, you're talking about fight or flight. Um, but really teaching people that it is a normal
Right.
response from your brain.
Yeah.
It sees a crisis in that moment
Mm-hmm.
because you've thought 20 steps ahead.
Yes,
And but you're not actually in crisis right now.
exactly.
But
Yeah,
your brain is prepared to be in crisis.
it
That's why we're
is.
so good
Yeah.
in emergency
Yeah.
situations. You want an
Yes.
ADHD person because we've
Yes.
already problem solved all the solutions. We just have to
Exactly.
pick which plan to execute.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think, the other thing about understanding our brain is it helps you realize that there's nothing wrong with you.
Yes.
That there's nothing wrong with you, so yeah, you sometimes you're paralyzed and don't know what to do next, or sometimes you're full of worry or whatever it is, right? But your brain is doing that because it's trying to keep you safe. And your brain, if you have ADHD, is emotionally dysregulated, so it tends to do that more often. But ultimately, your brain is just trying to keep you safe. And when you understand it in those terms, you can kind of say, all right, well, there's nothing wrong with me. What's the next step? How do I move around this? Or how do I, find a strategy that will help me with whatever it is I'm faced with.
Yes. I'm having a little fun with it on my side of things here because I still, even understanding all that doesn't mean that every day is
Right now.
easy.
No, it doesn't.
The challenges still happen and I forget. That's the other thing, forgetting the things that
Yes.
actually
Yeah,
worked
yeah,
for you.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I saw a really funny reel on Instagram, and the woman was talking about the best strategy that she had learned recently for dealing with, I don't know if she was dealing with anxiety, ADHD, something like that. But she said somebody advised her to name her brain. So when like she wakes up with this existential dread, she can just be like, not today, Becky. Right. So I was like, I feel like, okay, that's so fun. I'm like, I'm going to start auditioning names for my brain. So Betty was the name that I came up with. I also try to pick names that like, I don't really know anybody named Betty.
For sure. Yeah.
You don't want to offend anybody. So I was like, sometimes you wake up and like your brain starts to go before you even get out of bed.
Exactly.
And I've been playing around with being like, Betty, we're not doing that today.
Right.
I'm not even out of bed. There is not coffee cup in my hand. Like, I am not ready for this. Like, let's just take a moment.
Yeah.
Let's breathe. And something about that makes it silly, fun, funny. I love silly, fun, funny.
Yeah.
And distance takes me out of the equation for a minute so that I can recognize it's not me. That is just a pattern that happens in my nervous system.
Exactly.
That's not me. It could be coming from who knows what. It could be coming from a dream I was having. So I don't know if you've ever done that, Barb, but if you haven't done that yet, name your brain.
I will need to do that. I haven't done that, but I have heard of people naming their inner critic, which is a similar kind of thing, right?
Same.
Where, you have that voice in your head who is yapping at you and telling you, mean things. And there's a book I love. The author named her inner critic Hilda.
Love it.
And so, so sometimes I'm talking back to Hilda, but I feel like they'd be separate. I'd have a name for my brain and a name for my inner critic because they feel separate to me, but that's a great idea.
Totally. Yes. I've heard that one and done that one in the past. I have to say, I don't experience as much of the like conscious inner critic because went through those years of like, I hear you, but I'm still doing this thing. I'm excited about it. So we're just going to move forward. She's not so loud anymore. She just kind of hangs out with her book in the corner and doesn't really speak up much. But the automatic thought system, that's a everyday, all the time kind of thing. So I'm in the beginning of my experiment with Betty to see if that helps me. But I'm also thinking like saying like, Betty, that's not how we operate in life. Let's do a little tapping sesh. And then at the end, let's see if you feel like you can get on board with me about what we're really doing today.
Right. I love it. That's a great idea.
Oh my gosh. I love this so much. I love this conversation because I think no matter where someone is on their journey, whether they're exploring a diagnosis with ADHD, they're in a point in their life where they feel so overwhelmed and their nervous system is really, like you said, that amygdala is popping in and hijacking everything. I love that we have a tool like this for people to use. And I think what's really special about it is it's down-regulating your nervous system. It's giving you something to physically do. So you're getting your body into motion, kind of coming out of that highly reactive state, turning on your cognition a little bit more so that you can move forward. So I love this. So if someone was interested in learning more about tapping from you, where can they find information, connect with you?
So the best place to go is my website, which is barbhubbardcoaching.com. So it's pretty easy to remember, barbhubbardcoaching.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. That's my favorite platform right now. I am not on Facebook or Instagram anymore for personal reasons, not wanting to be in those spaces, but LinkedIn is a fun place to learn more about what I do and who I am. So,
I agree with. I love LinkedIn. The people that I have
Yeah.
connected with on LinkedIn are such wonderful people, so many giving entrepreneurs who
Yeah.
are really, if listen, listener, if you are an entrepreneur and you're not on LinkedIn, get on
Get there.
LinkedIn. Find me, find Barb. We're going to connect
Yes.
you with
Yes.
all the cool
Yes.
people. The
Yes.
cool people, by the way, are the people who are for each other,
Yes.
celebrate other people's wins, share what they're doing in a very meaningful way. There's a lot of embracing authenticity, which I think is huge. I love
Really.
your posts, Barb. I think, first of all,
You.
you are so beautiful. Your pictures are gorgeous
Oh,
on
thank you.
LinkedIn. Not to take it to a shallow place, but I have spent time with you and I feel like your pictures, your essence comes through. And you have the best and most giving nature. And that really comes through when you're posting on LinkedIn.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
I love LinkedIn for all those same reasons. And I feel like it's an authentic place to be. Like I can be myself and I can, share and give and could be connected with the people who need what I have to offer, but also connect others, to the people I know who need them. So yeah, yeah, I love LinkedIn. It's my favorite place right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. Between there and Substack, those are my two places.
Okay. I am
Um,
just starting to get into
yeah,
Substack a little bit. Yeah.
it's fun because it's a great space for writers and creatives.
Hmm.
And I love to write. I love to connect. It feels very much to me like when Facebook first started and it has that kind of new experience.
Yeah.
It's very even in terms of levels. At least it is for me. I know some people feel like it's starting to ramp up and feel like some of the other social media spaces. And I'm
Okay.
not downplaying any of them because they all serve their purpose. I
They
just
do.
feel like my energy feels best in
Yeah.
LinkedIn and
Yeah.
Substack right now. And I
Hmm.
also tried to simplify how many places I was showing up because I just know I don't have the energy to show up the best
Right.
I can everywhere all the
Right.
time.
Right. 100%. Yeah. Every platform has its role and its crowd. You have to find the one that works for you, which I'd say about everything, right? Find what works for you, find where you fit in. There is a place where you fit in and where you belong. And I'm trying to create that for my community, my audience. And, but sometimes you got to do a little searching before you find the right spot.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll say about LinkedIn that may mean something to the listener is that I have found it to be very inclusive to there's many people that I've connected with that either serve individuals with ADHD, they're an entrepreneur with ADHD, and other life challenges and diagnoses as well. But it seems like we're all showing up as we are with
Yeah.
a load of acceptance for
Yes.
people having a diverse experience and genuine curiosity about other people's journeys and desire to make the world a better place together. And I'm
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
I'm here for it. That's
Yeah.
all I really care about.
Right. Yeah.
Wrapped
Me
into
too.
one thing. Yeah.
Me too. Me
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
Well, Barb, I could speak with you for hours. I think we're already brainstorming a podcast episode where we talk a little bit about those routines, sleep,
Yes.
and setting up the magical ways that our days and our mornings go so much better, even if we're facing a lot of chaos, family, school, jobs. Yeah, being able to figure out the strategies that really make the biggest difference so that we can emerge into our days in our best state as our best self.
Yes. 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 Yeah, I hope that we can come back and talk about that some more because it is, sometimes it's one little thing that makes all the difference. And that's what I love about what you are doing and what you're sharing on your podcast every time is, who knows which little thing somebody's going to grasp onto, and that's what's going to make all the difference for them. And maybe it's EFT tapping, maybe it's routines. So, yeah, let's talk about that sometime.
Absolutely. I think as much as we can take these topics and our experiences and create practical strategies for the listener that really are an easy uptake. And
Yeah,
I believe, just like you were saying, that we're not in for years and years of figuring it out. It's just a couple tweaks. There is nothing wrong with you. You
right.
just need the right strategies. It just might be that the strategies and the environments and the places and the help you've had from people before didn't resonate with you. And that doesn't mean that nothing ever will. Just
Exactly.
means you haven't found that magic piece. Like you said, your client who tried the EFT tapping and
Yeah.
literally after one 45-minute session, like it was over in time with. It was a
Yeah,
breakthrough,
it was.
you
It was.
know?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think you take what works and the rest you just let it go and it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I want to add about her. She'd been working on this for ages,
Mm-hmm.
years, probably, trying different things, doing different things, watching the videos, reading the books, all right. You never know what's going to land. So you just got to keep at it, keep trying new things. It is helpful to have somebody to point it out to you. Like, yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
know
Mm-hmm.
this. Like, let's try that. Right. But yeah, don't give up on it. Keep learning, keep trying things because there's something out there that'll work.
Yes. I love that you're leaving us with that, Barb, because I think people need that. People need to feel the possibility when they're in the midst of challenge
Yeah.
and feeling like it's just never going to be better. And
Right.
it really, really can be.
I can.
Um, and some of us just spend a little bit longer in the messy middle,
Yep.
but it's going to be okay. And we're going
Yep.
to figure it out. I
Yeah.
really encourage you, listener, if you're struggling with your ADHD or you suspect that you have it and life is feeling overwhelming, please connect with Barb. Find her on LinkedIn, check out her website. We'll put everything in the show notes for you. But I'm telling you, she is one of the most genuine human beings. She comes with a ton of experience as a special educator for so many years, having worked with families, and knows as a woman herself
Yep.
and is thriving in her life now using her strategies, right? That you are in the best of hands. So I want to thank you one more time for being here, Barb. Come back anytime. We can
Yeah.
totally dive into more of those subset topics with
Yeah.
ADHD. And I hope, listener, that you've enjoyed listening. If you really resonated with this podcast episode, please share it with a friend. Be sure to like, to share. And if you have a little extra time, go ahead and leave a comment on what resonated from this episode. I love to read your comments, and it really does help the information get out to other people. This is the completion of season 5 of the podcast. I have had amazing, amazing conversations this season. Looking forward to season 6, which will start recording in September of 2025. So if you've listened and you have been geeking out with me, it may be time for you to go down to the show notes, schedule a meeting with me, and let's get you your own podcast episode on the Mystic Nerd Squad podcast. Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end. Thank you again to Barb, and I'll see you
Thanks
next
so much
time.
for having me.
Absolutely. Bye for now.